The medical frigate Mercy's Light floated through the darkness of space like a small white bird. It was not a warship. It carried no heavy weapons. Its hull was painted with the bright blue cross that meant peace and healing across all human worlds. Inside, 42 crew members went about their daily work, checking supplies, treating minor injuries, and preparing for their next stop at the colony on Kepler 7. Lieutenant Una Park stood on the bridge, watching the stars through the main window. She was 31 years old, with tired eyes and steady hands. She had chosen this life because she wanted to help people, not hurt them. Her crew felt the same way. They were nurses, medics, and doctors. They saved lives. They did not take them. The border zone between human space and Velthari territory was always tense. The Velthari were tall, gray-skinned beings with 4 arms and cold yellow eyes. They had built a mighty empire across dozens of star systems. They believed themselves superior to all other species, especially humans. To them, humans were weak creatures ruled by emotions. The Velthari respected only strength and conquest. Una checked the ship's position on her screen. They were still in neutral space, following all the rules. There should be no trouble. She was wrong. The first warning came as a flash of light on the sensors. Then another. Then 10 more. "Velthari warships," said the navigator, his voice shaking. 12 of them. They came out of nowhere. Una felt her heart drop, but she kept her voice calm. "Send out our identification. Tell them we are a medical ship. Non-combatant status. We carry no weapons." The message went out. The response came quickly, but it was not words. It was a weapon blast that struck their engine and killed their power. The Mercy's light went dark. Emergency lights came on, painting everything in red. The crew gathered in the main corridor, fear on every face. Una moved among them, touching shoulders, speaking quietly. "Stay calm. We have done nothing wrong. They will see we are not soldiers." Sergeant Ji-won Kim, a young combat medic with short black hair, stood near the airlock door. She was only 24, but she had seen enough of the galaxy to know that being innocent did not always protect you. Her brother Taiho served on a military outpost not far away. She wished he was here now. The airlock opened with a hiss of pressure. Velthari soldiers poured in, their weapons raised. They wore black armor and moved with the confidence of predators who'd cornered their prey. Behind them came an officer with golden marks on his chest plate. "On your knees," the officer commanded. "All of you." Una stepped forward. "I am Lieutenant Park, commander of this vessel. We are a medical ship under the protection of the Neutral Zone Treaty. You have no right to board us." The officer looked at her with his yellow eyes. His thin mouth twisted into something like a smile. "Rights are for the strong. You are not strong. You are human." He gave an order in his own language. The soldiers grabbed the crew members roughly, pushing them to the floor. Someone cried out in pain. Someone else began to weep. Ji-won did not cry. She looked straight ahead, thinking of her brother, thinking of home, thinking of survival. Far away, at Outpost Sigma 9, Commander Taiho Kim was reviewing supply reports when the emergency signal came through. He dropped everything and ran to the communications room. The message was broken and weak, but he recognized his sister's ship code. "Mercy's Light is under attack," he shouted. "Get me a rescue team now." But the distance was too great. By the time any help could arrive, it would be far too late. Taiho could only stand there, his hands gripping the console until his knuckles turned white, listening as the signal faded into silence. On the Mercy's Light, the Velthari soldiers bound the prisoners with energy cuffs and marched them toward the airlock. Their own ship, a massive transport called the Iron Fist, waited outside. One by one, The 42 crew members were forced across the bridge between the two vessels. Una was the last to cross. She paused at the threshold and looked back at her ship, her home for the past 3 years. She had a feeling she would never see it again. The Valkyrie officer walked beside her. "You will be taken to Veth Prime," he said. "Overlord Keth has special plans for you." "What plans?" Una asked. The officer did not answer. He only smiled that cold, thin smile. On Earth, Admiral Sunho Lee received the report 3 hours later. A medical ship captured. 42 prisoners taken. The Valkyrie had made no demands, offered no explanation. They had simply taken what they wanted because they believed no one would stop them. Admiral Lee was 60 years old. He had fought in 2 wars and negotiated 3 peace treaties. He had seen the best and worst of both humans and aliens. As he read the report, something cold settled in his chest. He had dealt with the Valkyrie before. He knew how they thought. They saw kindness as weakness. They saw mercy as invitation. They believed humans would do nothing but complain and cry. He hoped they were right. He hoped this would end with diplomacy and prisoner exchanges. But deep in his heart, in the place where old soldiers keep their darkest knowledge, he knew better. He began making quiet preparations, just in case. The Mercy's light drifted alone in the darkness, empty and silent. Its distress beacon blinked on, calling for help that would never come. And 42 prisoners flew toward a fate they could not imagine. 3 weeks passed after the capture of the Mercy's light. Human diplomats sent message after message to the Valkyrie Dominion. They asked about the prisoners. They offered trades, negotiations, anything. The Valkyrie answered with silence, or worse, with mockery. "Your females will be returned when we decide," said one Valkyrie official during a communication. Perhaps they are being taught proper respect. Perhaps they are learning what it means to face a superior species. The human ambassador demanded proof that the prisoners were alive and well. The Valkyrie cut the connection. On Outpost Sigma 9, Commander Taiho Kim could not sleep. Every night he lay in his bed and stared at the ceiling, thinking about his sister Jiwon. Was she hurt? Was she scared? Was she even alive? He sent requests to his superiors, begging for permission to lead a rescue mission. Every request was denied. The politicians said they needed more time. They said war was not the answer. They said patience would bring the prisoners home. Taiho did not believe them, but he obeyed. He was a soldier. He followed orders. On Veth Prime, the 42 prisoners were kept in cold cells deep underground. They were given little food and less water. The Valkyrie guards enjoyed making them suffer. They called them names. They pushed them. They laughed at their pain. But the prisoners did not break. Una Park kept them together with her calm voice and steady presence. Every day she led them in quiet exercises. Every night she told them stories of Earth, of green forests and blue oceans and cities full of light. She made them remember who they were. Jiwon Kim stayed close to her commander. The young medic had seen death before, but nothing like this. Still, she refused to cry in front of the guards. She refused to give them that satisfaction. "They want us to beg," Una told her crew. "They want us to prove we are weak. We will not give them what they want. We are human. We endure." Then came the day that changed everything. The prisoners were taken from their cells and brought to a great hall in the center of the fortress. Thousands of Valkyrie soldiers filled the seats around them, watching with hungry eyes. At the front of the hall stood Overlord Keth himself. Keth was tall even for a Valkyrie, nearly 3 meters in height. His gray skin was covered with scars from ancient battles. His yellow eyes burned with pride and cruelty. He had ruled the Dominion for 50 years, and in all that time, no enemy had ever made him afraid. "Today," he announced to the crowd, We will show the galaxy what happens to those who enter Valtteri space. Today we will teach the humans their proper place. Una understood then what was going to happen. She felt fear, real fear, for the first time since the capture. But she pushed it down. She looked at her crew, at the 41 faces that had trusted her to lead them. She would not abandon them now. "Stand tall," she said quietly. "Whatever happens, stand tall." The executions began. One by one, the prisoners were brought forward. One by one, they were killed while the Valtteri cheered. Overlord Keth spoke between each death, making grand speeches about the weakness of humanity, about the glory of the Dominion, about the foolishness of those who thought they could stand against Valtteri might. The broadcast went out on open channels. Every planet in human space could see it. Every station, every ship, every home. On Earth, Admiral Sun Ho Lee watched with a face made of stone. Around him, his staff wept openly. He did not weep. He was too angry for tears. On Outpost Sigma 9, Commander Taiho Kim watched his sister walk to her death. Ji-won did not cry. She did not beg. She looked at the camera, and for just a moment, it seemed like she was looking directly at him. Then she was gone. Something inside Taiho broke. And something else, something harder than steel, took its place. Unipark was the last. Overlord Keth himself stood before her, enjoying the moment. "Do you have any final words?" he asked, his voice full of contempt. "Perhaps you would like to beg for mercy? I might let you live as a servant." Una looked at him. Her hands were bound. Her body was weak from weeks of captivity, but her eyes were clear and strong. "You have made a mistake," she said. Her voice carried across the hall, carried across the broadcast, carried across the stars. "You think we are weak because we value life. You think we are soft because we show mercy. You are wrong. You have killed 42 of our people. Innocent people. Healers. Women who wanted only to help others." She paused. The hall was completely silent. "You have no idea what you have just done." Overlord Keth laughed. Then he gave the order. The broadcast ended. Across human space, there was silence. In homes and offices, in military bases and civilian stations, people sat frozen. They had just watched something terrible, something that could not be taken back. Then the silence ended. It ended with rage. The United Human Council met in emergency session. The vote was unanimous. There would be no more diplomacy. There would be no more patience. There would be war. Admiral Sun Ho Lee received his orders that same hour. They were simple and clear. Destroy Veth Prime. Send a message that would echo through history. Make sure no one ever harmed human prisoners again. The Admiral read the orders twice. Then he began to smile. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had been holding back a flood and was finally given permission to let it go. Humanity had been pushed too far. Now the galaxy would learn why that was a mistake. In the days after the massacre, something strange happened. Human ships began to disappear from Valtteri space. Trade routes went quiet. Communication channels closed. Where once there had been human merchants, diplomats, and travelers, now there was only empty void. The Valtteri celebrated. They believed the humans were running away in fear. They held great feasts and praised Overlord Keth for his wisdom. "The soft ones have learned their lesson," the generals said to each other. "They will never challenge us again." They were blind. They could not see what was happening behind the silence. Admiral Sun Ho Lee worked without rest. He called in favors from every corner of human space. He gathered ships from Earth, from the Mars colonies, from the stations around Jupiter and Saturn, from the distant settlements near Alpha Centauri. Every warship humanity owned was summoned to a secret meeting point in deep space. 300 vessels answered the call. Battleships, destroyers, carriers, and cruisers. The largest fleet humanity had ever assembled. They called it the Reckoning Armada. Commander Taiho Kim requested transfer from Outpost Sigma 9. He wanted to fight. He needed to fight. The memory of his sister's face burned in his mind like a fire that would never go out. Admiral Lee approved the request personally. He gave Taiho command of a destroyer called the Ghost of Mercy. Every crew member on that ship had lost someone in the massacre. A mother, a sister, a daughter, a friend. They were volunteers, every single one. They had come not for glory or medals. They had come for vengeance. "We sail for Veth Prime," Taiho told his crew on the first day. "We will not stop until justice is done. We owe them that. We owe the 42. On the bridge of the flagship, Admiral Lee met with Captain Minji Choi. She was young for her rank, only 35. But she had earned her position through brilliant tactics and iron will. Some called her cold. Others called her a genius. The Admiral called her his best weapon. "I need you to design the attack plan," he said. "Veth Prime has the strongest defenses in the Dominion. Shield generators, orbital platforms, ground batteries. No one has ever broken through." Minji nodded slowly. She had been studying the fortress world for weeks, learning every detail. "They have weaknesses," she said. "They think they do not, but they do. Their shield network has a gap in the southern hemisphere. It only opens for 30 seconds during their power cycle. That is our door. 30 seconds is not much time. It is enough. If we time it right." While the fleet prepared, Dr. Hyun Woo Shin worked in a secret laboratory on the dark side of Earth's moon. He was a weapons researcher, a quiet man who had spent his life building things he hoped would never be used. 10 years ago, he had created something called Project Sunfall. It was a weapon that could crack planetary shields like eggshells. The government had locked it away, calling it too extreme, too dangerous for civilized warfare. Now they unlocked the vault. Hyunwoo looked at his creation with sad eyes. He had always known this day might come. He had just hoped it never would. "Is it ready?" asked the military officer who had come to collect it. "It has always been ready," Hyunwoo replied. "I built it to end wars. I suppose that is what it will do." Across human space, people were not just angry. They were united in a way they had not been for generations. Old arguments between Earth and the colonies were forgotten. Political enemies stood together. Factories that had made civilian goods began making weapons and ships. Recruitment centers were flooded with volunteers. Young and old, men and women, people from every background and every profession. They all had the same fire in their eyes. They all carried photographs of the 42. Lieutenant Eun Ji-han was one of these volunteers. She was a fighter pilot, one of the best in the fleet. Her mother had served as a nurse on the Mercy's Light. Yoonji had watched the broadcast alone in her quarters. She had not cried. She had simply walked to the recruitment office and signed up for combat duty. "I want the front line," she told her commanding officer. "I want to be there when we hit them." The officer looked at her record. Perfect scores. 0 failures. A natural killer in the cockpit. "You will have your wish," he said. As the days passed, the Reckoning Armada grew stronger. Supplies flowed in from every human world. New weapons were installed. New tactics were drilled again and again. The crews practiced until they could fight in their sleep. And always, the 42 names hung over everything. They were written on the walls of ships. They were spoken before every meal. They were remembered in every quiet moment. The Velthari had wanted to teach humanity a lesson about weakness. They had taught the wrong lesson. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Sun Ho Lee looked out at his fleet. 300 ships, shining in the starlight, ready for war. Behind him stood his officers, men and women who had sworn to follow him into fire. "We move out in 6 hours," he said. "No turning back. No surrender. We go to Veth Prime, and we do not leave until justice is done." No one argued. No one hesitated. The storm was gathering, and soon it would break upon the Veltari with all the fury of a wounded species. The 42 were about to be avenged. The Reckoning Armada arrived at Veth Prime just as the sun rose over the fortress world. 300 human warships appeared from hyperspace in perfect formation, blocking out the stars like a wall of steel and fire. On the planet below, alarms began to scream. Veltari soldiers ran to their stations. Defense platforms powered up their weapons. Overlord Keth himself was pulled from his sleep by terrified aides. "How many ships?" he demanded. 300, my lord. It is the largest fleet we have ever seen." For the first time in his long life, Keth felt something like fear. But he pushed it away. His fortress was strong. His shields were unbreakable. The humans would crash against his defenses like water against rock. "Let them come," he said. "We will destroy them all." Admiral Sun Ho Lee stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the planet grow larger on the view screen. Around him, his crew waited in tense silence. This was the moment they had trained for. This was the moment of truth. "Open a channel," the Admiral said. "All frequencies. I want everyone to hear this." The communication officer nodded. "Channel open, sir." Sun Ho Lee spoke. His voice was calm and cold, like winter wind. "Veltari Dominion. This is Admiral Sun Ho Lee of the United Human Fleet. 24 days ago, you murdered 42 of our people. Innocent people. Healers and nurses who had done you no harm. You broadcast their deaths to the galaxy as a show of your power. You wanted to prove that humans are weak." He paused. On the planet below, and on ships throughout the system, everyone was listening. "You were wrong. We are not weak. We are patient. We are kind. We believe in mercy and peace. But when you hurt our people, when you kill our families, we become something else entirely. Today you will learn what that something is." He took a breath. "There will be no negotiation. There will be no surrender accepted. There will be no mercy. We have come to collect the debt written in the blood of 42 innocents. And we will collect it in full." The channel closed. The battle began. Captain Minji Choi's plan worked perfectly. The human fighters, led by Lieutenant Eunji Han, dove toward the southern hemisphere where the shield gap would appear. The Veltari defense platforms opened fire, filling the sky with deadly light. Ships exploded. Pilots died. But the humans kept coming. 20 seconds to gap, Eunji said into her radio. Her fingers were steady on the controls. Her eyes were fixed on the target. She thought of her mother. She thought of the 42. She felt no fear, only purpose. The shield flickered. For exactly 30 seconds, a hole appeared in the defense network. "Now!" Eunji screamed. 100 fighters poured through the gap like arrows through an open wound. Behind them came the bombers carrying Project Sunfall. Dr. Hyunwoo Shin watched from a safe distance as his creation was deployed. The weapon struck the main shield generator with a flash brighter than the sun. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the planetary shields began to collapse, section by section, falling like curtains in a storm. The Reckoning Armada moved in. Commander Taeho Kim drove the Ghost of Mercy straight at the orbital command station. This was the place where his sister had died. This was where Overlord Keth had stood and laughed while innocent women were murdered. Taeho's hands were steady, but his heart was burning. "All weapons," he ordered. "Fire." The Ghost of Mercy unleashed everything it had. Missiles, lasers, plasma cannons. The station's armor cracked and broke. Fires erupted inside. Valkyrie soldiers tried to escape, but there was nowhere to run. On the ground, 50,000 human marines landed in drop pods. They fought through the streets of the fortress city with terrible efficiency. Every soldier carried a small card with the 42 names printed on it. Every soldier knew why they were there. The Valkyrie fought back hard. They were proud warriors, and they did not surrender easily. But human rage was stronger than Valkyrie pride. Room by room, building by building, the fortress fell. Overlord Keth tried to escape. He ran to his personal shuttle with a small group of guards, planning to flee to another system and rebuild his power. But Lieutenant Yoonji Han was waiting for him. Her fighter appeared from nowhere, guns blazing. She destroyed his guards with 3 precise shots. Then she disabled his shuttle engines with a 4th. Going somewhere? She asked over the radio. Keth's shuttle drifted helplessly. Yoonji flew circles around it, watching him through the cockpit window. She could kill him now. One more shot, and it would all be over. Her finger hovered over the trigger. But she did not fire. No, she said quietly. Death is too easy for you. You need to answer for what you did. She escorted the crippled shuttle back to the planet's surface, where human soldiers were waiting. The battle lasted 17 hours. When it was over, Veth Prime lay broken. The great fortress that had never fallen was now a ruin of smoke and fire. The Valkyrie military was shattered. Their fleet was destroyed. Their empire would never recover. Admiral Sun-Ho Lee walked through the rubble of the command center. Around him, soldiers were securing prisoners and tending to the wounded. The fighting was finished, but the work was not yet done. They found Overlord Keth hiding in a basement, surrounded by dead guards. He was brought before the Admiral in chains. The proud ruler who had mocked humanity was now covered in dust and blood, his yellow eyes wide with terror. Please, Keth whispered. Please, I surrender. I accept defeat. Show mercy. Admiral Lee looked at him for a long moment. Mercy? He repeated. You want mercy. He thought of the 42. He thought of Yuna Park and Ji-won Kim and all the others. He thought of their final moments. You will have your answer soon, he said. The reckoning was almost complete. Overlord Keth stood in chains before a court of human judges. The trial was held in the same great hall where he had murdered the 42. The seats that had once been filled with cheering Valkyrie soldiers were now filled with human witnesses and journalists from across the galaxy. Admiral Sun-Ho Lee sat in the front row. Commander Tai-Ho Kim sat beside him. Lieutenant Yoonji Han was there too, along with hundreds of others who had fought in the battle. They had come to see justice done. The evidence was presented. The broadcast of the massacre was played again. Every word that Overlord Keth had spoken, every laugh, every insult, was recorded and shown to the court. There was no question of guilt. There was no room for doubt. When asked to speak in his defense, Keth tried to argue that he had followed the laws of his own people. He said the prisoners were enemy combatants. He said he had the right to do what he did. The chief judge, a gray-haired woman named Suman Beek, listened patiently. When Keth finished speaking, she looked at him with calm eyes. You say you followed your laws, she said. But there are laws higher than those of any single nation or empire. The law that says prisoners must be treated with dignity. The law that says healers must not be harmed. The law that says killing the helpless is murder, no matter what uniform you wear. She paused. You broke these laws. You broke them proudly in front of the entire galaxy. And now you must answer for it. The verdict was guilty. The sentence was death. Keth screamed. He begged. He called for mercy again and again. But his cries echoed in an empty hall. No one moved to help him. No one spoke in his defense. The execution was broadcast on the same channels that had carried the massacre. Every planet that had seen the 42 die now saw their killer brought to justice. It was not revenge. It was not cruelty. It was simply the final chapter of a story that had to end. When it was over, Admiral Lee stepped forward to address the cameras. "Today we have done what had to be done," he said. "We did not enjoy it. We take no pleasure in death. But some crimes cannot go unanswered. Some messages must be sent." He looked directly into the camera. His voice was quiet but filled with ire. "To every species in this galaxy, hear me now. Humans are not warriors by nature. We are builders. We are dreamers. We are healers. We would rather trade than fight, rather talk than shoot, rather make friends than enemies. But if you harm our people, if you kill our innocent, if you believe that our kindness makes us weak, you will learn the truth. Our patience has limits. And when those limits are crossed, we become something you do not want to face." He let the silence hang for a moment. The 42 will never be forgotten. And neither will this lesson. The broadcast ended. In the weeks that followed, human forces withdrew from Veth Prime. They did not destroy the planet completely. They did not kill every Velthari. Instead, they left behind a broken empire and a watchful presence. Human ships would patrol this space for generations to come, making sure the Dominion never rose to threaten anyone again. On the ruins of the command center, workers built a memorial. It was a simple structure of white stone, shaped like a circle. In the center stood a pillar with 42 names carved into its surface. Flowers from Earth grew around its base, planted in soil brought from humanity's home world. Commander Taiho Kim visited the memorial on the day it was completed. He walked alone through the quiet garden until he stood before the pillar. His sister's name was there, carved in the stone. Jiwon Kim, medical sergeant. Beloved sister. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small medal. It was Jiwon's service award, given to her after her first year as a combat medic. She had been so proud of it. Taiho placed the medal at the base of the pillar, among the flowers. "I kept my promise," he whispered. "I made them pay. I hope you can rest now." He stood there for a long time, remembering her smile, her laugh, the way she used to tease him about being too serious. The tears he had held back for so long finally came. He let them fall. 1 year later, Captain Minji Choi returned to the memorial. She had been promoted twice since the war. Some called her a hero. She did not feel like one. She felt like someone who had done a terrible job because it needed to be done. As she walked through the garden, she noticed something strange. There were new flowers at the base of the pillar. Not human flowers. These were alien plants from distant worlds. Someone had traveled a very long way to leave them here. She bent down and found a small note among the petals. It was written in an alien language, but a translation was included. "We are the Kolvani. We watched what the Velthari did. We watched what humanity did in response. We had always feared your species. Now we understand. You are not to be feared because you are violent. You are to be feared because you are patient. We will never forget this lesson. We will never give you reason to teach it again." Minji read the note 3 times. Then she smiled, just a little. She looked up at the pillar, at the 42 names, at the blue sky above. "You changed everything," she said to the dead. "You changed the galaxy. And you did it just by being who you were." She placed the note back among the flowers and walked away. Across the galaxy, word spread. Species who had once looked at humanity with contempt now looked with respect. Some even looked with fear. But it was a healthy fear, the kind that prevents wars rather than starts them. No one ever harmed human prisoners again. The 42 had become 42 reasons why. And humanity, for all its kindness and patience and dreams of peace, had proven once and for all that some lessons are learned in blood. The galaxy remembered. It would never forget.